thanks for watching. I'm just going to read for you some of a letter that was written from Pontius Pilate to Augustus Caesar, who was in Rome. Now, Pontius Pilate was the Roman governor over Jerusalem and Israel during the time of Jesus' resurrection. Well, Jesus' death and resurrection. But what I want to read to you was first part of the letter just describes confirming all the things that Jesus did, healing the sick, raising the dead, all these other things. And he was saying that this is something greater than even our God or false gods like Zeus and Apollo and all that. So, and at the time of he was to be crucified, there was a darkness over all the world, and the sun being darkened in midday, and the stars appearing, but in them appeared no lustre, and the moon, as if turned into blood, failed in its light, and the world was swallowed up by the lower. Now let's just listen to this a minute. Now it says darkened. The sun was darkened. Well, first of all, this was prophesied. It said that the sun will go down at noontime in Jerusalem, and the whole earth will be darkened in the clear day. Okay, and it also in Revelation it speaks to this. Revelation, there'll be a great earthquake, and the sun will be darkened, and the moon will come like blood, and during that event, it is because every mountain and island is being moved out of its place, which in the sort of Nibiru terms of things and other stuff, it's basically something's going to grab hold of our crust and turn our crust round. So it's not the sun that's going down, it's the earth that's being twisted around during this event. And if you think, like, say, it says darkened, alright, the sun was darkened in midday, but the stars appearing, okay, so if the stars are appearing, the sun hasn't gone out. That's one point, because the stars reflect the sun. And the moon, as if it turned into blood. Now, as we know nowadays, what they're talking about is a total lunar eclipse or a blood moon. We're in the middle of 4 blood moons now. We had one on Passover, April 2014. We had one on the Feast of Tabernacles, October 2014, and now our next one is the Passover 2015, and then the last one, the next one, who makes up the 4 tetrads, will be September 2015. But my point being is our terms these days, we would call that a total lunar eclipse or a blood moon. Now, for you to get a total lunar eclipse or a blood moon, you have to have the sun shining on it. Okay, so you have to have the light shining on it. So the sun hasn't gone down. It's gone down to us. So, like I say, it's got to be the earth being twisted round as a pole shift. It's dragging the crust round. Now, in Israel, if you're a watchman, you'll know what I'm talking about. We watch the earthquakes, and we see lots of good example, California, lots of earthquakes all the time because the land is on a fault line. Okay, but Israel, hang on, let's pull it. But Israel, as we can see, if you see this red line here, it runs up the Jordan Valley, let's say, or the River Jordan. The Jordan Valley is actually the fault line on where it runs up, and you can see it, and it runs up to the Sea of Galilee up there, and across. So you can see Israel is on a fault line. But what's really strange, I don't know why this is, maybe it's because Israel is God's chosen land, let's say, but Israel just don't seem to get earthquakes, you know, like compared to California, let's say, where again you can see the red line, probably a bit clearer here, and it runs all the way up here, this San Andreas fault line, and it goes all the way up the land. But as you can see, quake, loads you get loads of quakes around here, but not so with Israel. In fact, you know, when they get a quake, they think something's wrong. And you can see here the date, the 24th of the May 2015, that residents report feeling light tremors in the area spanning no injuries. But this was a surprise to them because they don't get it that often. But one came in May 2014, which kind of feels right. You know, if you look at our timeline, for him to come down in April, the Passover time. My main point I'm trying to make is that the earth, the whole earth, would have been experiencing a great earthquake during this time, and the only thing that will cause that is that thing that we call Nibiru, which I'm pretty sure is the throne of God. And like I say, if this thing's coming down, then it's gonna shake and cause this to happen. It says, and the world was swallowed up at the lower regions, so that the very sanctuary of the temple, as they call it, could not be seen by the Jews in their fall. And they saw below them a chasm of the earth, and with the roar of the thunders that fell upon it. That's amazing, that, isn't it? Saw below them a chasm of the earth with the roar of the thunders that fell upon it. And so, you know, a chasm is, in very simple terms, a hole in the ground of some sort. You know, an abyss is a hole, canyon, ravine, gully, got past that. So basically, holes appeared in the ground that swallowed the Jews, and it says in the roar of thunders that fell upon it. That's very interesting, that thunder, you know, either the noise of thunder fell upon the earth, or, you know, thunder and lightning fell upon the earth, which caused the sinkhole. Very interesting. But chasm of the earth, now what do they mean by that? What is the chasm of the earth? Our today's understanding of things today, a chasm of the earth to us now is a sinkhole. Well, you know, the earth giving way. And, you know, before people start saying these things have happened for years, if these things had happened for years, then you'd see it in the cities, in the news, everywhere, all the time, but they're not. And it's very interesting, because on a video, someone's talking about Nibiru. This is the thing. It says that the electromagnetics from this thing will be so strong, he says, that the earth will give way. It'll be like quicksand. Now, these things have only happened in the last couple of years, but if you watch it, you'll see a pattern. And when this thing, Nibiru, the throne of God, gets so close to us, this is what's going to happen, and the earth's going to be collapsing. So, again, we see a clear resemblances between the day of Christ's resurrection and everything else that happens, and the present day we're in, because we're living the symptoms of this. Big earthquakes, chasms in the earth opening out, blood moon. Well, we've got some blood moons coming up. You know, one in 2.5 months, one 6 months later. So, you know, just putting that out there. And in the terror, dead men were seen that had risen, as the Jews themselves testified, and they said that it was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and 12 patriarchs, and Moses and Job that had died, as they say 3,500 years before. Interesting number, 3,500. And there were very many whom I also saw appearing in the body, and they were making a lamentation about the Jews on account of their wickedness that bad come to pass through them, and the destruction of the Jews and their laws. So dead men have resurrected. This doesn't happen every day. This has got to be something like God's presence on the earth, his throne coming down, and the fear of the earthquake. So they were fearing earthquakes. Even in Israel, they were fearing earthquakes. So they knew this. They felt it. They knew about it. Remained for the 6th hour, and the preparation until the 9th hour. And on that evening, of the first day of the week, there was a sound out of heaven. Wow! So that the heaven became enlightened. Could it be a trumpet? The noise of a trumpet? And the heaven became enlightened sevenfold, so the sun became 7 times brighter, I think I interpret that as, more than all the days. And at the 3rd hour of the night also the sun was seen brighter than it had ever shone before. And as lightning comes suddenly in winter, so majestic men appeared in glorious robes. So these are angels they're talking about, or they've come from heaven, they've come from the throne of God, maybe. A great multitude, whose voice was heard as that of a very great thunder, crying out, Jesus that was crucified is risen, come up out of Hades. Ye that have been enslaved in underground regions of Hades, and the chasms of the earth, was as if it had no bottom. This is talking about the sinkholes again, but it was as it the very foundations of the earth appeared along with those that were crying out from the heavens, and walked about in the body in the midst of the dead, and had risen. So basically it's all taking place, and these big holes are opening up in the ground, and these men have turned up in white robes. Like I say, this is from the Roman emperor, so you know what I mean. It's he goes before you into Galilee, and all that night did not cease shining, and many of the Jews died, swallowed up in the chasms of the earth. Now this is important. So these chasms of the earth were not just like random holes. Maybe it sounds as if they were, either the holes were, or God, knew where they lived, or do you know what I mean? He put them into the area knowing that they would go against Jesus, and basically all their homes disappeared in all these sinkholes, so that on the following day most of them who had been against Jesus could not be found. So the Jews fell down the sinkholes as well. Others saw appearing of those that had risen, whom no one of us had ever seen, and only one synagogue of the Jews was left in Jerusalem since the disappearing of the fall. So, and he adds, with that, terror being in perplexity and seized with a most frightening trembling, I have written what I saw at the time. So yeah, he was scared, but imagine when it does happen, and this Nibiru throne of God, it does pass over, and there's going to be earthquakes, and the sinkholes are going to disappear, and maybe dead are going to be raised, and you're going to see people in white robes that you've never seen before coming down, and do you know what I mean? So there's a lot which is in that's the same concerning the Nibiru thing and what happened in the day of Jesus. So I just thought I'd make a video on that. Thanks for watching, and I will leave a link to where I found the letter so you can go read it for yourself. Please join us on Facebook if you can. God bless you all. Amen.